Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to New Zealand Shores. My name is Fabian. I'm a licensed immigration advisor. We also have today Sarah Crone, Principal Advisor and Director at New Zealand Shores, and Charlotte Natu Stockman, who is also a licensed advisor. We hope you're all well and healthy wherever you are in the world. And we thought it would be a good idea to provide an update on where things are at with partnership-based visas, partnership-based applications. So what we'll do, we'll first summarize the types of visas, the requirements, and then we'll provide a much needed update on the processing of visas and the New Zealand border restrictions, border closures. So let's first provide a little background on what a partnership visa is. Sarah, would you please give us a quick
Yep, thanks,
overview of
Fabian,
what
and hi, everybody.
that is?
Nice to be with us. So Immigration New Zealand recognises the need to strengthen families and communities, and the fact that bringing families together in New Zealand obviously contributes to our economy and our social development, so really important. So to this effect, Immigration New Zealand allows for several different visa types to be applied for based on being in a relationship with someone. The main ones are being a partner of a New Zealand citizen, being a partner of a New Zealand resident, a partner of a work visa holder, and the partner of a student visa holder are the main ones. And each of those different visa categories has a different set of requirements and a different threshold in terms of demonstrating the relationship. So yeah, that's just the main partnership visas.
So as far as evidence is concerned, I'm guessing it comes down to proving that the relationship is true and likely to continue. Can you tell us a bit more about what's involved?
Yeah, so the key words that immigration, or the definition, if you like, that they use and refer to is that the demonstration that that partnership is genuine, it's stable, and that partnership is likely to endure. And there is the requirement that partners have lived together for a period of time. So we do realise people are sometimes in a relationship, but they've never lived together. Therefore, that would not meet the test of partnership in the eyes of Immigration New Zealand, which can be frustrating, but that's the definition that they work to. So as I said, the definition, the threshold of evidence requires is varied for each of those different visa types. You need to have a period of living together. So for a temporary visa, immigration like to see, a minimum of 4 to 6 months duration of physically living together, and that obviously is case dependent. A residence application, you must be living together for a minimum of 12 months. For some applicants, they can actually apply for outright permanent New Zealand residence based on their relationship. And for that, you need to have a period of living together for at least 5 years. And that will then give you the right to live in New Zealand indefinitely.
Right. And for that last category you talked about, that's strictly partners of New Zealand citizens, right?
That's right. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Charlotte, you must be managing these kind of applications on a daily basis. Can you tell us what it is that Immigration New Zealand is looking for in terms of evidence?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a massive rise in partnership applications since COVID. There's a lot of kids coming home with their partners, so it's definitely kept us really busy over this period of time. There isn't an exact list of documents that Immigration New Zealand require. As immigration states, the onus is on the applicants to provide enough supporting evidence to demonstrate that their relationship is genuine and stable. But as licensed immigration advisors, because we deal with these applications all the time, we have a really good idea and overview of what is actually required. And we can guide our clients through that really closely. Partnerships, of course, a very personal matter. No two partnerships are the same, and how everyone structures their relationship, their finances is all different. So for us, we look at the couple in question. We do send a set list of documentation instructions that will have examples of documents, but more often than not, I'm having conversations with people to figure out the documentation they can provide specific to their relationship. And quite often it's immigration will accept things that aren't even on their own list of set documents. So that's where our experience becomes really valuable.
Yeah, sometimes we need to think a little bit outside the box, I suppose. I can recall of cases where people live at their partner's parents' place, for example. We need to prove that, you know, the relationship's still genuine, or people sharing accommodation with other people, in which case you still need to prove that your partner is your partner and not just a flatmate. So yeah, that's where we come in essentially. Thanks for that overview. Now, Sarah, COVID-19 has obviously upset many people's migration plans and visa processes. Focusing specifically on partnership applications, can you tell us where things are at the moment?
Yeah, so as probably a lot of viewers know, New Zealand chose to close our borders with every effort and intention to keep COVID out, which we've done so successfully. So unfortunately, however, that has meant that we've seen a lot of families and couples unfortunately split over that time. When I say split, it means that they're apart, not because they want to be, because of factors out of their control, and that being that the New Zealand border has closed. So what generally happens with families that are moving to New Zealand, and again, it's case by case, but quite often you'll have one person or the partner or the principal applicant travel to New Zealand sometimes ahead of the family, and that's to start work, you know, set up house, start to look for schools. And for some families that did happen over COVID, and they have, you know, one family member in New Zealand and the rest of the family unfortunately still overseas. So current border restrictions as they are today do not yet allow for those families to be reunited, and that is extremely sad. The most recent exemptions that we saw implemented was only for those that had actually lived in New Zealand. So for those families that you know, currently apart, if the family that is offshore actually did come to New Zealand, activate their visa and did spend a period of time living here, then immigration are now allowing for those people to come back. But that's only for those situations. So we're really hoping there's going to be more easing of border restrictions soon for families that have been apart. So yeah, if there is anyone who's watching, get in touch with us because yeah, we can start to communicate with you the updates as we receive them.
Right. So to pick up on the example you just mentioned, essentially, if I'm a temporary work visa holder currently working here in New Zealand, I still cannot bring my partner or my children over to New Zealand to join me unless they used to live here.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Now, Charlotte, about a week ago, Immigration New Zealand eased border and visa restrictions for partners of New Zealand citizens and New Zealand residents. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so ever since the borders closed, Immigration New Zealand had rolled out a system for border exemption requests really quickly. We saw that stood up within a matter of days. The process has been fine-tuned over the last month, of course, as governments get better at responding to COVID. So the idea was to minimize and filter international arrivals so that no new COVID cases were imported from offshore, or those that were imported from offshore could be identified and quarantined. The quarantine facilities are limited. I think at the moment they are able to cater for about 7,000 people at any given period. So while that sounds like a lot, and it's kind of not, the quarantine facilities are limited and they're strict. So they're focusing solely on partnership-based applications. Immigration New Zealand's resumed processing for offshore applicants. So up until a month ago, they were only processing applications for people in New Zealand. So it was really good to see that change made. So these can be submitted as per normal if you are a New Zealand citizen or permanent resident living offshore with your partner. You can now submit an application again, so that's really great. These can be submitted online. Processing timeframes are, however, still quite long, and the verification of your passport overseas will depend on where you are and whether that verification branch is open. But if you're not sure, get in touch and we can definitely help you through that process. So yeah, once again, just to be clear, we are strictly talking about partners of New Zealand citizens and residents. So If you can wait 3 to 5 months, we can submit a partnership temporary visa application. Once approved, you'll be able to travel to New Zealand. If you wish to enter New Zealand earlier than that, you will need to apply for a visa waiver. Sorry, if you are from a visa waiver country, you won't need to apply for the exemption if you wish to enter earlier. But if you are from high-risk countries or non-visa waiver countries, you will still need to apply for that exemption, which we can help do on your behalf to allow you to travel to New Zealand. So if your request to travel is successful, you'd normally be granted a visitor visa for 6 months. That process happens really quickly. We're seeing those come through within a week or two. And then once here in New Zealand, that's when you could, go back to the start almost and submit those applications.
Oh, thank you for that. So with the COVID pandemic, many Kiwi expats, New Zealand citizens overseas are finding that, hey, New Zealand is actually an awesome country to live in, and perhaps it's a good time to relocate to New Zealand with their partner, whom they met offshore. Is it also an option for the partner of that Kiwi then to apply for residence directly from overseas? And if they're happy to wait, then to fly to New Zealand once the resident visa has been approved? Sarah?
New Zealand is most definitely an awesome country, and it has been surprising actually the number of New Zealanders since COVID that have decided to relocate back to New Zealand. I think they said there was almost 1 million Kiwis living overseas when COVID hit, so that's a lot of Kiwis to flock back to New Zealand. But yes, so when someone engages with us, we often recommend that depending on their timeframes and when they do want to be in New Zealand, that we get their residence application underway. Processing times is around 4 to 7 months for a partnership resident application. So it's awesome if we can get that in and processing. If they want to travel to New Zealand, before residence is approved, then they can do that. We can apply for a partnership work visa as well, and at the same time, because you can have 2 visa applications processing essentially. But some people that are happy to wait, we just process a partnership residence application. And they can travel to New Zealand once it's approved and be granted New Zealand residence. So yeah, definitely an option.
Cool. So now the visa is approved, moving to the arrival at the border. As you mentioned, Charlotte, New Zealand, the government put in place a quarantine system very early on. So how does that work on arrival? You get your visa, or you're a New Zealand citizen, you travel to New Zealand. Do you have to go through quarantine? Does that apply to everyone?
Yeah, it does apply to everybody, unfortunately. New Zealand citizens, New Zealand residents, and those otherwise out of that category that have been granted a border exemption. They're all subject to a 14-day quarantine period on arrival, and that's an approved facility. So normally it's a hotel or other facility near the airport. And depending on your visa type, most people are now required to pay for quarantine.
Right. Okay. So definitely something to budget in your travel plans. How are things looking to evolve over the next few days, weeks, months with these border exemptions?
Yeah, I'll get out my crystal ball, Fabian, and I'll do a reading for you. Look, it's really hard, and we just had an election in the weekend as well, so we're really hoping that we're going to start seeing some movement now that the government re-establishes themselves. They've got the campaigning period out of the way, and they're back in office and looking to really, put policies in place to assist with economic recovery since COVID, but also balancing obviously those health concerns that we always have with, a border that we need to have people coming in. We need to get those families reunited. There's the need now to obviously get those skilled migrants back in. And I think the good thing is the government realises that. So I don't envy their job in moving forward, but it's a fluid situation. The best thing that our viewers can do is really just like our Facebook page so they get the constant communication that we have when it comes to us. Obviously, we send out newsletters as well and just updates to our clients. So I haven't really answered your question, Fabian, but it's a really fluid situation. It's, New Zealand, we're COVID free. essentially, apart from, you know, a few cases in quarantine. So what we can do largely depends on the rest of the world as they continue to try and resolve the pandemic as well. So we have to work collectively, I guess, and just hope to see over the next couple of months some easing of the border. And yeah, best thing to do is to keep in touch with us to get those updates.
Yeah, absolutely. As you've said, Sarah, it's a very fluid situation. Ever since March, I think, we saw policy updates literally on a weekly basis, changes, minor fine-tuning to the border restrictions. So as licensed advisors, we keep on top of those changes and we inform our clients accordingly. If you have any questions, just message us through Facebook or email us at info@newzealandshores.com. Like our Facebook page, we'll endeavour to publish updates as we get them. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks Sarah, thanks Charlotte for your time, and we'll have a couple more lives over the next weeks. The next one next week is about teaching in New Zealand. We'll have a guest who will talk about job opportunities. And then early in November, we'll have another live for health professionals who New Zealand desperately needs at the moment. So thanks again for watching and keep well.